Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Now with today's main headlines. UN Human Rights Council holds session on Afghan women issues. Ancient Cairo cemetery under threat, Reuters reported. Tunisian protesters demonstrate against political arrests. Scientists warn Himalayan glaciers could lose 80% of their ice by the end of the current century. Assalamu alaikum dear viewers, this is Hussein Jawad and you're watching Shia Waves live from Imam Hussein TV 3 in London. On Monday, June 19th, the United Nations Human Rights Council held a meeting in Geneva with the presence of the Council's Special Rapporteur on Afghanistan affairs and a number of Afghan human rights defenders. Some of the participants of this meeting criticized the performance of the world during nearly 2 years of Taliban rule over Afghanistan, claiming that in some cases the world supported the Taliban group instead of standing by the oppressed women of Afghanistan. Details in the following report.
The 53rd regular session of the UN Human Rights Council was held in Geneva, focusing on the human rights situation of Afghan women and girls. Although it was expected that the Council would take a more serious position against the Taliban's inhumane actions against Afghan women, most of the participants were once again satisfied with repeated declarations and condemnation of the misogynistic practices of the Taliban group. In the meantime, Shahzad Akbar, the head of Afghanistan's Human Rights Commission, criticised the performance of the world during nearly 2 years of Taliban rule over Afghanistan, noting that in some cases the world stood by the Taliban instead of supporting Afghan women. Mrs. Akbar called for the practical measures of the United Nations to support the women of Afghanistan, urging the governments of the world to be careful in how they interact with the Taliban. She further called on world leaders to take action against normalised violation of human rights in Afghanistan and the deprivation of Afghan women from their basic rights. Some diplomats and representatives of a number of international organisations also expressed their views in connection with Richard Bennett's recent report on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, especially the situation of women, and supported the content of this report. Richard Bennett, the Special Rapporteur of the UN Human Rights Council on Afghanistan, said in this meeting, "The situation of women and human rights in Afghanistan has worsened. Women are marginalised and critics and opponents of the Taliban's ideology are in a difficult situation." He added, "This council must take action. Talking alone is not enough. Afghan women demand practical action and the rulings and fatwas of the Taliban against women should be cancelled immediately." He also emphasised the formation of an inclusive government with the presence of the representatives of all ethnic groups in Afghanistan, and added that immediate action should be taken to reopen schools and universities for girls and women and to punish perpetrators of violence against women in Afghanistan as soon as possible. In this report, which was made public last week, it is stated that the Taliban have issued 50 restrictive decrees against the women of this country in 21 months of rule over Afghanistan, which has caused the removal of Afghan women from the scene of social life. Reporting Aruj Fasma for Shia Waves.
Thank you Aruj Fatima for the report. And now we have a guest joining us, Mr. Habib Ahmadi, a Shia political activist from Southampton, is with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. The first question today is, what is the importance and impact of the UN Human Rights Council's meeting on the human rights situation of Afghan women?
Well, nothing is better than, something is better than nothing. It's just it shows that the world is still don't forget Afghanistan, but and also, we need to have the voice of the people in Afghanistan outside the Afghanistan, like the United Nations, human rights, or other UN uh, conferences, anything that to show the Taliban that the world is still watching. I think that's the only message is sent inside Afghanistan, that the world is watching, the world is don't forget about Afghanistan. But it is not enough to deter the Taliban. It is not enough to the Taliban that listen to the UN and to change their policy and change their view on the human rights and women rights. Unfortunately, the UN report, as I had in your report as well, the UN report, the special representative reports, this is only part of what's happening in Afghanistan. It's not a full pictures. There is a lots of area that they don't have access into internet, and they don't believe the way the America pull out of Afghanistan is send a very wrong message, and people were for in a shock for a while. You're talking about they lost hope on international community. Basically they hand over after all this efforts, all this money, and all this hope built up in Afghanistan, and they hand over the country back to the hand of the terrorism. Unfortunately, but that's one part of the human rights, women's rights, and the representative of other ethnics in Afghanistan. The Taliban don't care. They don't have any plan to rule Afghanistan to make people's life better or women's life better. They don't have any plan. It's not their priorities. Their priorities, their main aim of the Taliban is to rule Afghanistan, to have Afghanistan in their controls, as to be in a power in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
One ethnic groups dominate Afghanistan, and one ethnic groups control Afghanistan, and therefore that is their first and last strategy, and first and last plan, and first and last thing they want from Afghanistan. They don't care what's happening
So,
to people of
so to what you're
Afghanistan.
saying, in addition to condemnation, what practical measures are necessary to be taken by the international community against the Taliban?
Well, unfortunately, as you know, the Ukraine war is happened just a few days afterwards. They pull out in Afghanistan. People seems to be like forgot such a you know uh, scary
Yeah.
or shocking move by the US coming out of Afghanistan. You saw all the people jumping out of airplanes. You see mm, the chaos in Kabul airports. Unfortunately, the Taliban's, the way they took over Afghanistan, because the NATO and international community being in Afghanistan, the NATO's lost their legitimacy, and they lost their belief. They lost their face that the people was thinking of the NATO going to do something. But however, uh, I think the Afghanistan neighbors, they are more important than, I think we should not, when we talk about the international community, we should not talk about the West only. I think the Afghanistan neighbor like China, Iran, Russia, they are, they are more important because they know Afghanistan very well. They have access, they
Yeah.
have the experience, and they have the man on the grounds. They have influence on the grounds. I think if the US or United Nations get all this Afghanistan neighbor together, plus with the help of the West, I think that is send very strong message to Taliban.
So
without
if the
help of the
Taliban,
Afghanistan people.
yeah, sorry. So if the Taliban ignores the will of the international community, how do you predict the future of Afghan women and girls will be moving forward in the
Well,
future?
it is very dark future at the moment. Oh, I have strongly believed that from the past and then now the way the Taliban's are dealing with Afghanistan, as I said, they achieved their goals. Their goal is to dominate Afghanistan, to control Afghanistan, to rule Afghanistan by one ethnic only, which is the Pashtun.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that is what this their game is. The way they are. I mean, the Uzbek, the Hazaras, the Tajiks, the other ethnics, the Baloch, and we have Arab, Kashayis, all other ethnic groups in Afghanistan. They have no say in the government at all.
Yep.
But the Taliban will take the neighbors serious more than anybody else because they, as I said, they have the neighbors of Afghanistan. They have the experience. They have the man on the ground. They have influence. That's the only way they will take the people, our international community serious. International community, unfortunately, now you see the gap between the West and the Russia because of Ukraine war, because of the Taiwan, the China and Russia,
Yep.
China and US gap, and you get Iran's because of the CPOAs, whatever they have the nuclear issues between the West and the Iran. All these things is in benefit of Taliban. Taliban don't want one voice in any, never been in one voice about Afghanistan. The people want, every country have different goals in Afghanistan. Every country wants different things from Afghanistan. But some countries, unfortunately, the West, as you see in the reports, they stood by Taliban.
Yep.
They want, because the Taliban is doing favor, Taliban destabilizing those countries which is not the friendly country to the US.
Okay.
Taliban destabilizing the neighbors, those countries who are not very allies to the US, to the NATO. So that is they're doing favor in one hand. That's why, but unfortunately, the until we see in a strong voice the neighbors of Afghanistan, with the help of the West, they have to stand together and really pressurize Taliban. Then we will see maybe the Taliban change. But I think the future of Afghanistan looks very dark. The Taliban may not listen to any voice from outside, and then you will see the other ethnics. They have to stand up in different ways and take the matter in their own hands.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Habib Ahmadi. Thank you for joining us today on Shia Waves.
No problem. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Reuters reported that thousands of tombs in the historic Islamic cemetery known as the City of the Dead are under threat as a road and bridge expansion project aims to alleviate congestion in Cairo. Conservationists and families have expressed concern over the destruction of burial sites, with many prominent families maintaining deep connections to the cemetery. The government's efforts to construct wide highways linking Cairo to a new capital have involved the removal of graves, prompting outrage and calls for preservation. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has ordered the formation of a committee to evaluate the situation and to explore alternative solutions. The UNESCO World Heritage Site, spanning 10 square kilometers, holds significant cultural and historical value. Specialists warn that without intervention, much of the City of the Dead's rich history may be lost, risking the destruction of unique Islamic architecture and artifacts. Tunisian protesters took it to streets to declare their solidarity with the political prisoners linked with the conspiracy against the country's security case. According to Arabi 21 news outlet, the protesters, including the leaders of the National Liberation Front, the Ennahda movement and the Republican Party, alongside with Tunisian lawyers, carried out pictures of political detainees linked to the so-called conspiracy case, chanting slogans such as freedom, freedom and go, go. You are defeated, referring to the Tunisian president Qais Said. The protesters also demanded early elections. The detainees are under great oppression and have been in prison for several months on false charges. Saad Ahmed al-Najib al-Shaibi, head of the Tunisian National Liberation Front, he added, "We will continue our action until all prisoners are released. Our presence in this rally is to declare solidarity with them." In response to the decision to prohibit the media from publishing news about the controversial case, he commented, "This is a strange decision and an invalid action, which is not possible to implement as free people adhere to freedom of speech." Let's remind our dear viewers of today's headlines. UN Human Rights Council holds session on Afghan women issues. Ancient Cairo cemetery under threat, Reuters reported. Tunisian protesters demonstrate against political arrests. Also tonight, German court issues verdict allowing Muslim teachers to wear hijab in public schools. Scientists have warned that the world's highest peaks are at risk of losing up to 80% of their volume by the end of the current century, with serious consequences for millions of people who are already suffering the volatile climate changes. International scientists in Nepal examined in a report published today, Tuesday, by the International Center for Integration Mountain Development and the impact of climate change of an area stretching 1.6 million square miles, which is 4.1 million square kilometers, from Afghanistan in the west to Myanmar in the east, according to the report. Glaciers in the Hindu Kush and Himalayan mountain range region melted 65% faster in the 2010s compared with the previous decade, which suggests higher temperatures are already having an impact. Scientists consider 1.5 degrees of warming as a key tipping point, beyond which the chances of extreme flooding, drought, wildfires, food shortage could increase drastically. According to the report, many high mountain communities rely on glacier waters to irrigate crops and to maintain their livestock, but the accelerated melting would inundate farmlands and will be followed by the periods of drought. And now we continue with some short news. The Saudi authorities have executed a Shia young man on accusations of taking part in an anti-government protest as part of its series of executions against the followers of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Informed sources and Saudi activists said that the Saudi authorities beheaded the Shia man Ahmed Muslim Milad on Monday based on alleged accusations the government attributed to him. It should be mentioned that the human rights organization have condemned the escalation in number of executions the government is conducting against its citizens, especially the Shia Muslims, calling on the international community to take firm steps to stop such violations. The Amnesty International has called on Pakistan's government to urgently stop its campaigns of arbitrary detention and harassment launched against the Afghan refugees and asylum seekers who left their country due to Taliban's persecution. The organization said in a statement today, Tuesday, followed by Shia Waves, that it's deeply concerning that the situation of Afghan refugees in Pakistan is not receiving due to international attention. In its statement, the Amnesty International added that it had conducted 9 new interviews with Afghan refugees, with 6 who were detained in Pakistan over the last 3 months. All the refugees who were interviewed confirmed that they were harassed by Pakistani police and officials. The administration of the Karbala-based Hadifatul Quran School for Women, affiliated to the Karbala Hawza for Women, has expressed its happiness over the genuine interest of the believing families to encourage their daughters to join religious courses. The school's administration said in a statement to Shia Waves agency they had launched a religious course titled Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra course with a large number of female participants. It pointed out that the religious activity held in a participation with Amir al-Mu'mineen Foundation, which aims to invest the girls' time during the summer holiday to teach the Islamic beliefs, Quran sciences and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Iraqi authorities unveiled the stone inscription that was recently returned to this country by Italy, according to the agency France Press, as the Iraqi authorities tried to recover the looted historical monuments of this war-torn country. The government unveiled on Sunday a 2,800-year-old stone inscription that was recently returned by Italy. This inscription, written in cuneiform, bears the sign of Shalmaneser III, an Assyrian king who ruled between 858 and 823 BC in Nimrud region located in present-day Iraq. Police are investigating an incident where a weapon was reportedly pointed at the Shia Islamic Center and Mosque in Blackburn, Lancashire. Witnesses say someone was waving a gun, prompting a thorough search of the area by officers. Reassurance patrols have been carried out and authorities are urging anyone with information to come forward and assist with the ongoing investigation. The incident occurred late on Saturday, June the 17th, and CCTV footage is being examined to gather further details. Information can also be provided anonymously to Crime Stoppers. After 20 years of its decision, a German court has issued a verdict allowing female Muslim teachers to wear the hijab in public schools. According to a report published by the Spanish IBC newspaper, followed by Shia Waves agency, based on demands from various civil organizations linked to immigration, a Berlin-based court has lifted the ban imposed on the Islamic headscarves, stating that the decision is unconstitutional and discriminatory. The newspaper quoted that activists are saying that they believe this decision could lead to other similar decisions in 7 other German states, where Muslim teachers are not allowed to wear the Islamic hijab in public schools. The Spanish newspaper explained that the court's decision came following a verification of the large number of the Muslim students at the capital's institutes, noting that some of these institutes have about 90% Muslim students due to immigration. According to the newspaper, the rights activists who won their fight against the decision argued that the decision is anti-Islamic hijab and that it promotes anti-Islam discrimination. We have reached the end of today's Shia Wave show. Let's remind our dear viewers of today's main headlines. UN Human Rights Council holds session on Afghan women issues. Ancient Cairo cemetery under threat, Reuters reported. Tunisian protesters demonstrate against political arrests. Scientists warn Himalayan glaciers could lose 80% of their ice by the end of the current century. German court issues verdict allowing Muslim teachers to wear hijab in public schools. You can view the latest news on our Shia Waves website, and you can send news of your city or country to be published on our news agency. Contact us on the numbers at the bottom of the screen. Thank you very much for watching. We pray to Allah Almighty to hasten the reappearance of the Master of our time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I am the sun, the star at the center of your universe. I am a wondrous threat made of hydrogen and helium, marveled by poets